Well, hey everyone, it's Nate here. Welcome to day 4 of our Live in the Mojave Desert week, where we're talking to the bands that were part of this incredible concert series. Now, years from now, when the story of the COVID-19 pandemic is told and the subject of art and music comes up, there's going to be relatively few highlights. It was a tough year for musicians, artists, and fans, as we were unable to gather for any live shows. But where one door closes, another one opens, and one of the absolute bright spots of 2020 was the Live in the Mojave Desert concert series, a series of 5 concert films made at the height of the pandemic, featuring some amazing bands like Earthless, Spirit Mother, Nebula, Mountain Tamer, etc. However, one band was formed in the weeks leading up to this event and made their debut on the streaming TV screens around the world. That band is Stöner, the brainchild of friends and former bandmates Brant Bjork, Oliveri and Ryan Gut. And Stöner was a stroke of genius, and in a year of challenges and horseshit, the formation and debut of Stöner was a rare and wonderful surprise. Now today, Brant Bjork joins us to talk about the formation of Stöner, the Mojave Desert Show, his vinyl history, the Brant Bjork recent reissues, and more. And not only does Stöner have an LP and Blu-ray available of the Live in the Mojave Desert set, they also have a brand new album called Stöner's Rule, available at HeavyPsychSounds.com. Go to Heavy Psych Sounds now and get the beautiful vinyl variants of this amazing amalgamation. Stöner's Rule. And by the way, if you're one of our wonderful patrons at patreon.com/vinylguide, you may want to head up there now because there's some goodies waiting for you. Not only have I uploaded all the episodes from our Live in the Mojave Desert week early, but I've also put an extra episode in there, a secret episode, only available to patrons at patreon.com/vinylguide. If you're not already one, that's okay. You can fix that now. Head up to patreon.com/vinylguide, sign up, help support this show, and enjoy all the extras. Alrighty, well, let's jump into the van and drive on out to the desert and start our conversation with Brant Bjork. I mean, the fact that a band like Stöner exists in our lifetime is absolutely incredible. Brant Bjork, Oliveri, Ryan Gut, Stöner's Rule. Let's start the interview. Mr. Brant.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I got my coffee here. It's early morning here in Sydney.
Oh, you're in Sydney?
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like it's late afternoon there. For what is it? What is a typical day for Brant Bjork?
A typical day for Brant Bjork is navigating the slippery slope of marriage and kids.
I feel you. How many grommets do you have?
I have 2 grommets, 10 and 9, 2 boys.
Ah, are they into music like their dad?
They are. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
My 10-year-old has a minor obsession with Hendrix and Mitch Mitchell, and he loves Kiss and Sabbath. And it's interesting because I don't and didn't have to do a whole lot of prodding I just kind of, it's environmental, and he just kind of responded as he did. And then my other boy, Brazil, the 9-year-old, he's more just all around. It's hard to tell what his. I think his musical interests are just more emotional. Like if he's feeling a certain mood, he'll get into it. If not, he's not down.
Oh, okay. Are they using the record player at all?
Yeah, they know how to operate the turntable, and they like to pull records out, and of course they're masters of the iPad and iPhone and all that good stuff.
Yeah. No vinyl accidents yet, though? Nothing dropped?
No, actually, well, when they were really young, like 2, 3, 4, they did pull some Frisbee action with this vinyl jazz compilation that I got at like some swap meet. And it wasn't a total like heartbreaker, but I was less than thrilled about it.
It was a learning opportunity for them.
For everybody. Yeah, that's for sure.
When my kids were younger, I had a filing system. If it was in a clear sleeve, they could play it. If it was I had these red color sleeves. If it was in a red sleeve, well, those are the more expensive ones. You could play it, but you got to get me to help you.
Assistant. Yeah.
And that went for my wife too.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Well, vinyl's important.
So the family gathers around the record player quite a bit. In my family, again, my kids had no idea how a CD works, but they could tell you everything about the vinyl and the turntable just from absorbing it in. So I imagine a lot of the family life centers around the stereo.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that. I never really thought about that. But yeah, my boys have no concept of a compact disc at all. But we do have a nice turntable with speakers that are lodged in the ceiling of the house, and so it is definitely central to our social area at home. But we've always had we've moved around quite a bit, so we just in the last couple years kind of officially got grounded. But before then, we were definitely kind of like gypsies. But we always had a record player at arm's length, and the kids were always involved, and they grew up with records for sure.
Mm-hmm. Talk to us about your collection. Like, give us a description, maybe how big it is, what sort of contents are in there, and some of the records that not only were influential to you, but also mean a lot to you.
Well, my first record collection that I started putting together as a kid, which I was very, very into, it was my life force. Unfortunately, I hit some hard times in the mid '90s and sold that. I'm still upset about it, but and that would have been mostly like all my hardcore and punk and 80s stuff, and so that's a shame. My first love was the Ramones, so I had a gazillion Ramones records, and I nerded out on like first presses and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But I let all that go, and then started to redesign another collection, probably in the early 2000s. And and for my first collection, I did keep like all my reggae and jazz, and a lot of my funk. And then so I'm kind of rebuilding my rock collection over the last 15 years. Mm-hmm. But to be honest, I mean, if I play a record, I have quite a few records for sure, but I don't collect like I used to. I cheat now. I go to Discogs.
Yeah.
And just like, I can just find everything I want and I can get it. And but mostly I'm in the house. I'm mostly listening to mostly like jazz, stuff like that.
Oh, okay. What are some of your jazz go-to records?
I like that post-war bop era. So anything from I like the 50s, late 40s, all the way up to probably the early mid 60s. That's probably my zone. And
the Art Blakey's.
Blakey, yeah. I like Sonny Rollins and Coltrane, and I love I love Chico Hamilton. He's kind of
underrated. Oh,
very underrated. Yeah, he's very underrated. I think it's because he's from LA, and LA just doesn't really get the respect that New York does. But I love Chico Hamilton a lot. Eddie Harris, and yeah, the list goes on and on. I mean, I love jazz.
Yeah, in the last probably 15 years, I've gotten so deep into jazz, and part of it is that when I listen to contemporary music, the engineer in me starts to dissect what they've done and how they've recorded it, and I could hear punch-ins and things like that. But with a jazz record, there's none of that. So my brain completely lets go and only enjoys and absorbs the music, because it was just like one shot and those guys were done. So that's why I've been able to really get into jazz, because I've been able to drop everything else that was associated to music while I listened to it.
I understand. I understand 100%. And even when I was a young listener, my ears were already keen to such details that, like, that was my whole thing with getting into hardcore punk versus metal at that time. Because to me, as I got older and started listening more to jazz, like, hardcore punk had this urgency in the recording where it was so real and it sounded real. And then when I'd go and start listening to some of these metal records, I could tell that they were just so produced and it didn't have the same kind of life force. And that's what I feel when I listen to jazz. It's like you're saying, it's like they come in and they do their session that afternoon and they're done. The record's done. And it's not just masterful musicians that are able to do that, but masterful engineers as well. I mean, that's incredible. I love it. I love it.
Even with punk and metal, I could hear, okay, that's an E chord. Okay, I hear what they've done there. With jazz, it's like I'm completely lost.
I have no idea. It's a complete mystery. I have, and that's part of why I love it so much. You know, it's like, it's an absolute mystery, and that's what music should be. Really, it should take you on an adventure and take you to a place you just never been and don't understand. That's what jazz does for me. For sure.
Yeah. I guess you're right. It allows, for me anyway, it allows me to be naive again.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, 100%. Yeah.
So back to the life of a day in the life of Brant Bjork musically. Like, what is your musical day like?
You know, I'm not and maybe it's a real letdown to say this, but I'm not the kind of artist that works on my craft every day. I don't really play the guitar every day. I might go months without playing the drums. I don't sit around and write songs. When it's time to be creative, I literally just respond to that moment and that opportunity. And it started out as just the way I had to operate, and now it's just part of my creative style. You know, I don't know how to take advantage of having endless amounts of time to be creative. It's overwhelming for me. I think most of my music is just a response to a particular moment, and that's pretty much how I do it. You know, when it's time to make a record, like my last record, my self-titled solo record, I put those songs together, you know, while I was recording the record. I would be humming some ideas to myself on the drive to my studio, and I would just log them in my phone. And when I got to my studio, I'd start fleshing out the idea. And lyrics too. I find myself, if I'm trying to work on lyrics, if I have too much time, I just start overthinking everything. I need to literally be put on the spot, and then I can tap in and just kind of let it all flow out. And I think part of that has to be the result of, I kind of am, even though I'm a recording artist, I'm a performing artist. I like to perform live. I like being in the moment. I like being on that edge where you kind of, there's no looking back, there's only looking forward. And with recording and with, you know, being creative, the creative process and songwriting, there's so much looking back that there's a tremendous amount of, you know, second guessing. And, you know, just to reference jazz again, I've heard and read that, like, some of the later Miles Davis records, he would hire the best musicians and then wouldn't give them the music until minutes before they recorded. He didn't want them to wrap their heads around it, and he didn't want them to get comfortable, and he didn't want them to have that time to start developing an ego about it. He kind of wants them to be a little insecure and
on edge.
I get that. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm more creative and more authentic when I'm vulnerable. So that's kind of how it works, you know.
So a deadline is important to you.
I love deadlines. 100%. Yeah, I need deadlines. Yeah.
So do you plan to, like, okay, the next few weeks is going to be family and normal life, but come June sometime, these particular days, that's when I'm going to focus on the music. Is that how you manage it?
Exactly.
Okay.
So I live a pretty quote unquote normal existence, doing the day to day and the mundane and all that, and then it's like, okay, I got to go it's like going on a fishing trip or something. You know? It's like I got to go make a record now, and I go into it, and I go deep, and I go crazy for about 2 weeks, and then I come home with my catch, and this is what I got, and that's what it is. That's it.
So with this last solo album, it sounds like you wrote it just in the days and weeks leading up to it. Do you arrive with with a handful of riffs that you've cultivated over months, or is all that really a product of those few weeks?
It's a product of those few weeks, as I was saying. I've got just endless amounts of riffs recorded and logged, and but like I said, I always tell myself I'm going to go back and pick through that stuff and put stuff together. And there's been the odd moment when I have done that, but majority of the time, when it comes time to make a new record, I can't help but be inspired by the idea of just something fresh and new. Mm-hmm. And so my music is literally responsive to, like I said, that day, that week, what I'm feeling right then. I might have a riff that I really liked that I put down in March, but by the time I get to June, it's like my head's not there. My vibe's not there anymore. And I don't want to invest time in something I'm not feeling. Mm-hmm. I mean, I wasn't the kind of musician that grew up with the virtuosity of practicing my instrument and getting really good at a guitar or practicing the drums. I never practiced my instruments. To me, they're tools, and I just use them to build the house. And so I don't feeling and the emotion behind my creative process is the primary purpose for moving forward.
So that's the normal way or the usual way you go about recording an album. Are there times where you get unexpectedly inspired and feel you have to gravitate toward an instrument to capture a moment? Does that happen that often?
Yeah, absolutely. Some songs are the result of me feeling a real good groove on the drums and wanting to expand on that. Some songs are the result of a simple bass line that I just can't stop messing with. And then also the guitar. That's why I love the guitar so much, is because it's so like accessible. It's right there. You can paint with the guitar. I mean, that's why I completely understand, not on a technical level because it's far beyond my brain, but I can totally understand Hendrix and his love of the guitar. It just served him so well. I mean, it's like he just felt like it was endless of what he can do, and obviously did. And it was instantaneous. I mean, he might not have had a Marshall stack around him at all times, but he had his guitar. And in fact, I once read that the reason why he was so good is because he just constantly played his guitar. He probably logged a gazillion hours on that thing. And it was always there. And it was always, he was always able to jump on whatever idea he had in his head. He didn't have to go to the studio. He didn't have to get behind a big old piano or get a set of drums. He just had his guitar right there. And that was how he could flesh out these ideas. And so sometimes my songs are the result of my acoustic right there on the couch, or my electric guitar in the other room, and just pick it up. And I'll usually dump it in my phone, a little riff. It doesn't take much, just a little riff, and I'll just build upon it,
Mm-hmm. Do you also build upon lyrics and phrases that come to you?
Sometimes, if there's a hook, I feel like there are moments when my ego runs wild, and I feel like I've got something important to say. But in the end, it's just a hook. A hook is just a phrase that kind of haunts you, and you're like, okay, let's roll with this. The Beatles, probably John was probably sitting around, or Paul, and Can't Buy Me Love, man, shit. And they just run with it. And, there you go, a million records later.
Well, look, I've had an earworm in my head the last few days. By afternoon, you own your blues. That I can't get that out of my head right now. So
that's so funny, yeah.
So tell me about Stöner. So how did the band come together? You've been a solo artist for so long. Now, again, part of a band. What was that? What was that movement like for you?
Well, I to be perfectly honest, it is. I think the pandemic and the quarantine, peak of the quarantine just kind of was something that was really inspiring for me to just get back to the most basic primal essence of why I'm a musician, and to celebrate that with one of my oldest, closest friends that I grew up with, Nick Oliveri, of course, and my longtime solo band drummer, Ryan Gut. And my manager at that time, he had this concept of going out in the desert and recording bands performing out in the desert. And I thought, man, this is something that would be a real good catalyst for me putting this band together, getting back to that, the essence of being a 13, 14-year-old again. And especially getting to go out into the desert and turn it up and rock, you know. It's kind of a no-brainer. And that's really what it's, I assume I kind of feel like I was tapping into what people like, you know, maybe like the Ramones or even the Stooges, like they must have just felt this urge back then to just make music for music's sake, like a primal urge, you know, beating on guitars and beating on drums and you know, the true essence of rock and roll, this primal thing. You know, I wanted to get back to that. You know, I've made so many records and I've done so much, and it's like you start to fall into these habits of analyzing and overthinking and theorizing, and I just didn't want to do that anymore for this particular, you know, I just didn't want to do that. Okay. So I called him Nick. I said, Nick, let's start a band. Let's rock. He's like, yeah, let's do it. I'm all, remember we used to play Ramones covers in your mom's living room. Let's get back to that. He's like, let's go. I said, I got some ideas. And I think our second rehearsal, or I should say jam session, we left and Nick was like, man, if we're going all the way back, we should just call this Stöner. And I was like, perfect, man, let's do it. That was it. You know, just going ever since, man.
Was it Ryan's idea for the umlauts on the O?
I don't remember. I asked Mario Lally, our good friend Mario Lally, I asked him to put together a logo, and he did. And I think one of the logos he sent over had umlauts, and I was like, yes, that's perfect.
Because Ryan's got umlauts.
He does. He has umlauts in his name, so it all kind of works. There's a synergy there happening. But I was like, Stöner with umlauts. I'm all, oh my God, that's perfect. Yeah,
well, actually, if it's got umlauts, it should technically be pronounced Stöner.
Stöner.
Yes, an elongated vowel, I believe.
We'll be back after these messages.
Hey everyone, I gotta tell you about the Groove Washer, a record cleaner I use every day, and I've used it for years with nothing but excellent results. Not all record cleaners are equal, and not all of them are proved safely tested long-term for record storage. I mean, God forbid you get one of those cheap no-name brand record cleaners only to find out 5 years later that it slowly ruined your vinyl collection. Get a Groove Washer, ask for it by name at your local record shop, or go to groovewasher.com and use discount code VinylGuide10 at checkout. That's the Groove Washer record cleaner, groovewasher.com, promo code VinylGuide10. Now we're also brought to you today by AudiofileUSA.com, the used record shop that only sells excellent and near-mint vinyl records. With over 42,000 titles in stock, AudiofileUSA.com ships anywhere in the world. No need to guess the condition of anything at AudiofileUSA.com. All the records look pretty goddamn new and gorgeous, even if they have sat in storage for a few decades. Head up there now, AudiofileUSA.com, search by genre, label, artist, dig deep and find the deals. Get a box of goodies today from AudiofileUSA.com, home of the Holy Grails.
Now we return to the program already in progress.
No limits. Correct me if I'm wrong, but on your solo work, you do majority of the instruments, and you do it layer by layer in the studio. Is that right?
I have worked that way for years. But my last solo band, I put that together with the incentive of getting back to working and collaborating with musicians in a band. Yeah, I always called them kind of like my crazy horse. You know?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You know, I need a band to bounce. I mean, I grew up in bands. Being a solo artist was not part of that wasn't part of a plan for me.
Right.
That just happened. So, but to get back and put myself in a band situation where I'm have to collaborate, it's a team effort. I mean, it's always, there's always something to be said for that. I mean,
do you feel with Stöner that you can, I'm going to say that now. Are you in a bit of a different state when it comes to the band? For instance, I mean, it's, even though you're part of that band and you're in the front of it, it's not your name. Is it less pressure to share the band burden with a few other folks?
Yeah, I think so. I think every solo artist has a particular pressure. I think some of us solo artists, if not all to a certain degree, enjoy that pressure, and we like the challenge of having to dig deep within ourselves and authentically pull something out. But again, I start, like I said, I got into being in a band because, I like I said, I was a kid. I discovered the Ramones, and I wanted to join the circus. I wanted to hang out with my buddies and my brothers, and be like a little gang, a little I wanted to join the army, the rock and roll army, and the camaraderie and the team effort, and I miss that, And I mean, with Stöner, it's even though we're just a little trio, I feel it. I'm really having a lot of fun, and right now, fun is what a lot of us, I think, need.
Yeah. Did the music come together collaboratively through jams? Did you guys come with different material? How did that come together?
I had this batch of music that I thought was going to be a solo effort, but ironically enough, I was developing that music with the fantasy that I did have a band. So then I finally I kind of asked myself, well, why won't I just put a band together? So put the band together, and then said, hey, I've got this. We were also, again, because of I love deadlines and pressure. This band was born from a massive deadline. So I said, guys, we got to get this together. I think we played together as a band for 8 days before we performed.
Yeah.
So I took what I had, and we, knowing that Nick and Gut would be a tremendous rhythm section and would flesh this stuff out beautifully, and they did. So I literally bring a guitar riff. I don't tell Gut or Nick what to do. They just completely respond as a rhythm section. It's great. It's probably something like with Eric and Cream. It's like it's just gonna throw anything at Ginger and Jack Bruce, and it's just gonna be incredible. It's the same with Gut and Nick. But now that we've got that first batch of songs to get us in the game, now we're totally collaborating and throwing stuff back and forth. And I think our next record's going to be a real exciting endeavor for all of us.
So there's the Live in the Mojave Desert sessions, and then it sounds like a studio album's coming in the near future. Would that be fair?
Yeah, the studio. Well, we recorded the night before we did the Mojave session. We recorded in my studio the night before. My engineer and I were like, something tells us we should record this right now. So we recorded all our material, and the Mojave live experience is out there, but now we also have the studio version of that material, which has been delivered and I believe is being pressed probably right now. And it'll probably come out sometime this summer, June, I think I heard.
Oh, wow. Okay. Heavy Psych?
And then we're already working on new stuff, which we'll be recording our second record in July.
All right. It's coming thick and fast now.
Thick and fast, man. Yeah. It's it's funny.
Just to spend a few moments on this Mojave Desert session, what we see on the screen there is a band about a week or two old. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And you've spent much of your life playing shows in the desert. You're pretty used to it. It seems like a very natural place for you. What's the most frustrating thing about playing in the desert?
For me now, I'd say the most frustrating thing playing in the desert is that I don't get to do it all the time. Because I love it. I mean, sometimes there are, well, back when we were younger, and that's when we were coming up playing in the desert often, there were some, I mean, let's be honest, it's like playing rock and roll wasn't a seasonal thing. We did it whenever we could. So there was some natural elements that made it challenging, which would have been like, it gets cold, the desert gets cold. There were nights when we'd play with gloves and stuff. And then also wind. Sometimes there's some wind factor that's pretty intense.
I saw on the video for the Mojave Desert, the wind was really kicking up on you guys.
There were some moments where there was some wind happening. I think we got away with a pretty mellow night, but I know some of the other bands, I think there were a couple moments where they might have struggled with some wind. But that's just how it goes out there. You know, you just got to kind of roll with it. But it's regardless, even when it's a mess, there's something about it that just, it's satisfying as especially playing rock music, you know, it's just great to be outside, you know.
Yeah. The Live in the Mojave Desert sessions, they look professionally filmed. There's a whole camera crew, drones. It seems like a whole production out there. Was it like being on a movie set?
It was. I mean, I'm sure there could have been more imaginative and inventive ways to capture the footage. It really was a kind of a quick response. There was urgency in the air because of the pandemic, and everyone wanted to just get back to work and then quickly get something wrapped up and get to the viewers that we knew would probably be on the couch. So I guess, as the popular saying goes, it is what it is, but it serves a purpose, and, it was an adventure, and we all got involved and made the best of it, you know?
Yeah, that's a great kickoff for a band like Stöner. I'm assuming we got a couple albums coming up, it sounds like. I'm sure there's going to be some tours once, the world opens up and you're able to do that. Are you guys starting to put some dates and some festivals and some milestones out there in the calendar?
We are. In fact, there's already been quite a bit of confirmation. I mean, we'll be doing 3 separate tours on the East Coast and Midwest, being direct support for Clutch. And that'll be in September, October, and then we're doing that holiday run between Christmas and New Year's. So that'll be fun. And that's obviously this year. And then in 22, we'll be going back to work in Europe. We've got quite a few dates in mainland Europe, and then also some really solid dates in the UK and Ireland next year in 22. I think May, June. Yeah.
Oh, phenomenal. Well, hopefully you guys can swing through Australia at some point.
It's already been talked about. Australia's on the list, of course. So.
Woohoo. Let's quickly visit some of the reissues of your solo LPs. Jalamanta, reissued recently. Was the 20-year anniversary of that. A lot of your catalog you're starting to reissue on Heavy Psych with new artwork, remastered versions, etc. Was it important for you to revisit those records and kind of give them an updated look and feel?
Yeah. I have high output. I always knew as a solo artist, I would be involved in high output. That's just the way I work. I'm not chasing masterpieces. I think that's the jazz blues in me. I just gotta make records. That's what's to do. And Gabe is a great guy, and he has a great platform there and a great label for me to be able to continue putting new music out. But he also had a real keen interest in keeping my catalog up to date and clean it up and get it out there and keep it celebrated. And I was equally as excited about that as the opportunity to keep making new music with him, because my records and it's my work, and they're like my other kids. I love them all, and I want them to be healthy and happy. So it's nice to have them there. It's good.
Yeah, it seemed to as over the course of any artist's career, there's different look and feels of their albums, of their work. And it sounds like, it looks like now, to me anyway, your catalog is now coming under heavy psych. There's this very similar aesthetic. It feels like it's really coalescing now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been putting out records since '99. That was the first solo record I did with Frank over at Mandruin. And Frank had a very, very magical situation going on. He being a great artist, it was obviously a very artist-driven situation. Gabe has a little bit of that going with HPS, I think. But over the years that I've been collecting and releasing all these records, there wasn't always record labels that were even around that would be able to understand what I'm doing and provide an outlet for it. So I kind of just, as I was making records, I kind of also had to just kind of wait to for opportunities to kind of be created and present themselves. And Gabe was one of those. I mean, it just seemed like a no-brainer for me to say, oh my gosh, finally someone who has a situation that could really take care of what I'm doing here. So yeah, let's do this. It's awesome. Man.
For Jacuzzi, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that was an issue of an abandoned album project of about a decade earlier that seems now to have been revisited and put out. What did it mean for you to put out the Jacuzzi album?
No, it was good. It was a release. It felt, a closure. I mean, not to sound so dramatic. There was like this closure that it was interesting. That was a time when I was going through transition on many levels, and that was an abandoned record. I've got a couple more too that I've abandoned, for whatever reason. These things happen. And but it was interesting. Word got out, and people started to ask me about Jacuzzi, and I thought it was so interesting how like the one record that people feel they're denied is the one they want most, right? I mean, it's always the way. And I thought, well, gosh, I talk about pressure. I thought, man, you guys have romanticized this unreleased record so much. I hope it lives up to these expectations. But regardless, it was nice to finally get it out, and I think it deserved to be released. And it was a fun project in the time, and it was equally as fun to put out with Gabe, a couple years ago. I think it's been now. And yeah, there it is, Jacuzzi. Hallelujah.
Did you have to do much updating, much current instrumentation, or is it pretty much 100% the way you left it 10 years earlier?
I didn't add any instrumentation. It is what it is, but we did have to go back and remix it, I think. Yeah, we remixed it. The original master was kind of dark and bass heavy. And I mean, I've always, my engineer and good friend, Tony Mason, who I've cut many records with over the years, we both have a very complementary style. We like to work fast and then look back and laugh. But going back to Jacuzzi, we definitely had to make some corrections just to have it, sit proper.
Right.
And we did that. But yeah, and mixing was part of that. But yeah, I mean, it was recorded back in 2010, and it was a trip to pull it out. I mean, there it was. We didn't touch any of the music.
Now you're revisiting your catalog. Are you discovering that there's any missing tapes or anything that you can't quite find or locate? Well,
right after Jacuzzi, I believe right after that, Gabe wanted us to do the same with Halamanta. And Tony and I, that was the first record we did together. We loved Halamanta. We definitely accepted it as is and never thought it could be improved upon. But Gabe kind of said, hey, let's see, almost like a contest. Let's see if you can do something with Halamanta and remix it. I said, all right, we'll step up to that. So Tony and I agreed to remix Halamanta. And once we got the ball rolling, we realized we were missing one of the reels. And just about the time that we thought it was probably lost forever, got a phone call the next morning. And Tony said, "You're not going to believe this, but I found the reel in my garage, and I'd actually recorded some other stuff on it." And he's all, "But I found it." And so he'd had it for 20 years. And we pulled it into his studio that day, and sure enough, there was the there was the reel that we were missing, and then we were able to finally. It was really magical. It was pretty bizarre, actually.
Okay. Oh, he hadn't taped over it was just something at the end.
Recorded some other stuff on it.
Okay.
And it was just sitting on his shelf, and couldn't see the label.
Okay.
That is.
All right, so everything's all accounted for. Well, that's great. Look, I'm really happy to see all these albums reissued. Some gorgeous pressings up on Heavy Psych Sounds. I want to encourage folks to head up to heavypsychsounds.com, search on Brant Bjork, and just start filling up the online shopping cart. There is now a USA shop for Heavy Psych Sounds. There was a lot of talk about the cost of shipping to the States from Europe, where Heavy Psych is at, and now lucky you guys in the United States, you can get them much cheaper locally. Go to heavypsychsounds.com, look for the USA shop button, and follow your dreams there. Brant, thank you so much for coming on the show. Always a pleasure to have you. Really looking forward to Stöner, both in recorded form and live. People can Google Stöner. Of course, check out the liveinthemojavedesert.com. You could order the album there. Again, it's Ryan Gut, Brant, and Nick Oliveri. You and Nick, this is now your third band with Nick, is that right?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I stopped counting. Nick and I have we've been goofing off for many years.
You guys are like these atoms that every so often just click, and then they rotate away, and then they come back, and yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, we grew up in the same town together as kids, and we just loved music, and we hit it off as young kids, and just, I don't know, we're very lucky. I think that's the reward of doing what we've been doing for so many years, is you get to go back with one of your bros and just make rock and roll, man.
Yep. Hang with the people you love. That's what it's all about. All right, Brant, thank you so much for coming on the show, and we hope to see you live in the very near future.
Sounds good.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there we go. The legend, Mr. Brant Bjork. HeavyPsychSounds.com. Get the new Stöner album, Stöner's Rule. Of course, you can pick up the Live in the Mojave Desert LP there as well. And you can also go to liveinthemojavedesert.com to grab the vinyl and the Blu-ray disc. And that wraps up episode 4 of our Live in the Mojave Desert Week. Got another one to go, and it's a great one, so make sure you're subscribing to the Vinyl Guide podcast so you know right when the episode's available. And tell your friends, share this on social media, tweet it out on Twitter, share it on Instagram. That's all hugely helpful and much appreciated. All right, I'll let you go for now, but we're going to be talking to you soon with episode 5 from the Live in the Mojave Desert Week. Cheers.